Good evening, everyone.
Coming up next on News 4 Utah at 10. Salt Lake police hit the streets in force, looking for gangs who started a wave of violence. Opening arguments signal a hard-fought trial in the case of a Utah doctor accused of fraud.
A controversial stage play makes a return engagement to a packed house despite a church's objections. Is Portland's semi-pro baseball team heading for home in Salt Lake? We'll get answers. Dan steps onto the porch and into a wave of cold air.
And a little insight into what's happening to BYU's basketball program as News 4 Utah continues next.
Now, this is News 4 Utah at 10.
Good evening, everybody. I'm John Dupree in for Randall Carlisle.
And I'm Kimberly Perkins. Thanks for joining us. Salt Lake cops are on the street in force tonight trying to take them back from local gang members who've initiated a wave of violence over the past month. 3 firebombings, 4 drive-by shootings, a murder, and the shooting of a cab driver Tuesday morning. That's the tally since the death of a reputed gang leader March 4th. Chief Ruben Ortega is fed up with the violence, he says, and he's putting a special gang task force on the street to combat the problem. Our Scott McCain is standing by live on the street to tell us the latest. Scott, who's on the street and what's their goal tonight?
Well, Kimberly and John, Chief Ortega is putting 19 veteran officers on the street 7 days a week for the next month in hopes of getting some answers and arrests relating to all this violence. Now, after a strategy meeting this afternoon, the cops began their mission tonight by fanning out all over the city. Most of these veteran cops earned the right to get off the night shift years ago. But for the next 30 days, they'll be working all sorts of different hours, trying to track alleged gang members thought to be responsible for a recent rash of violence.
They'll be driving around, they'll be observing, they'll be holding surveillance on some places. They'll be knocking on some doors to see if they can find particular individuals we're interested in talking to.
Chief Ruben Ortega unleashed the task force after the latest act of gang violence, the shooting of a Salt Lake cab driver this week. Police believe 17-year-old Mario Ramirez pulled the trigger as a violent act of initiation, simply to prove he was tough enough to be leader of one local gang.
Our main objective is to gather information on the individual that shot the taxi cab driver, go out and beat the bushes and interview people and talk to people and see what information we can garner from that.
Aside from Ramirez, police are also looking for witnesses and suspects in fire bombings and drive-by shootings, one which killed a 26-year-old Salt Lake man last week. Well, John and Kimberly, the cops definitely want to catch the kid who shot cab driver John Adams, but they're also stressing that this is in no way open season on cab drivers by local gang members. Just the same, some of the local cab operators from 3 different companies got together tonight to have sort of a unity meeting to let each other know that they'll be looking out for one another. Even though they're fierce competitors out in the streets, they've set up some rules and some codes and a few code words to let each other know when they're in trouble and to keep an eye on one another.
Scott, who's looking after you? You appear to be, after all, standing in front of what looks like gang graffiti.
It is a Friday evening here in Salt Lake City. It's a bit busy, but around this corner right now, there appears to be really nothing much going on.
All right, Scott, thanks very much for the report.
Thank you, Scott. More questions about your safety. That is, if you drive a pickup truck built by Chevy or GM between the years 1973 and 1987, a federal safety agency today asked GM to recall more than 4 million trucks with fuel tanks mounted on the side, outside the frame. You're looking at GM's own footage of crash tests on their trucks. Today, the Federal Highway Transportation Safety Administration says the pickups are defective and a safety hazard when hit from the side. The crash tests didn't show any fire, but the government says in a side impact crash, the risk of fire with the GM trucks is 2.5 times greater than with a Ford. Risk of death, 3.5 times greater. GM disputes those government figures and says its trucks meet safety standards. The recall is voluntary right now. GM says it will not comply.
And now what the government plans to do about your health. More specifically, some fresh details on the Clinton health care plan. You'll get a new card entitling you to a basic package of health care benefits, a better package than many current insurance policies covering everything from immunizations to dental checkups. Those benefits will be provided by groups of doctors and hospitals working together as HMOs. Everyone must be offered the benefits and they can't be taken away. Now, to pay for all of this health care for everyone, the president is reportedly considering more than 20 different kinds of taxes. A federal court in Salt Lake City has started considering the fate of one healthcare provider. And if opening statements are any indication, the fraud trial for Dr. Robert Davis is going to be long and legally bloody.
The West Jordan doctor is charged with 41 felony counts of fraud. Courts reporter Paul Murphy was there for the early exchange in federal court.
Will the real Robert Davis please step forward? Is he a con man with a medical license or a simple doctor under persecution from federal prosecution? During opening statements at Davis's fraud trial, prosecutor Barbara Berenson blasts the doctor for billings based on lies to the government, insurance companies, and patients. This case was about a plan to defraud, a plan to cheat. Defense attorney Peter Sturba responds, "You're not going to see any scheme. You're not going to see any pattern." Sturba says disgruntled employees and freeloading patients are just out to get the doctor. That's what's driving the testimony, he says. But prosecutors plan to call witnesses with some amazing tales from Davis's Family Medical Center. A patient is charged for services at a time the doctor is at a Las Vegas boxing match. A woman trying to sell a motorhome to Davis is charged for a hernia treatment. And a chef who needs pain medication for his hand is required to get a blood test every 10 days. Davis allegedly tells him, "If you don't give blood, my pen won't write." Two strategies will be at work during this lengthy trial. The defense will try to blame the government, insurance companies, billing clerks, even the patients for mistakes that were made. The prosecution will try to prove Dr. Davis has no one to blame but himself. Paul Murphy, News 4 Utah.
State regulators are waiting for this trial to end before beginning a hearing for Davis on 130 counts of unprofessional conduct. Kane County Attorney Jim Scarth has been accused of rather unprofessional behavior in the recent past, and now his trial on drunk driving charges is being moved to Salt Lake so that his hometown publicity, which is mostly bad, won't prejudice the case. Scarth is appealing his November DUI conviction, his second in 6 years.
In Los Angeles, the case of 4 police officers accused of violating Rodney King's civil rights is about to be turned over to the jury. A defense attorney today said Rodney King was to blame for the beating by Los Angeles police. Officer Lawrence Powell hit King repeatedly with his baton, but his defense attorney argued that King could have brought the matter to a peaceful conclusion by actively resisting arrest. Tomorrow, another defense attorney will give his closing statement, then rebuttals by the prosecution, the judge's instructions, and finally, it's in the hands of a jury.
Still ahead tonight, the Pope uses a Good Friday service to reach out to Bosnia. We'll show you how.
And why so many Utahns are excited about getting AAA baseball back in town, and a clue to the likely new name of the team.
You're watching News 4 Utah, the station you turn to when you really need to know, with Randall Carlisle, Kimberly Perkins, Dan Pope with weather, and Carl Arkey on sports.
For the world's Christians, the most important time on the religious calendar is now underway, the 4-day period leading to Easter Sunday.
It began with the Last Supper Mass in Rome. The Pope washed the feet of 12 priests to recall Christ's gesture of humility to his apostles the night before he died. Pope John Paul invited those attending the Mass to contribute to a collection for victims of the civil war in Bosnia-Herzegovina.
In Israel on Good Friday, Christians from around the world walked the Via Dolorosa, or Way of Sorrow. The annual procession traces the traditional route Christ took on his way to crucifixion.
And tonight in Salt Lake City, Christians of all denominations joined in the annual Good Friday procession from First Presbyterian Church to the Cathedral of the Madeleine.
Jesus Christ Superstar is more than 2 decades old, but the rock musical is still selling out in Salt Lake and still under fire from the LDS Church. The Andrew Lloyd Webber production is packing them in this week at the Capitol Theater, but the Mormon Church says its 1971 statement on the musical still stands. The First Presidency called Superstar sacrilegious for portraying the Savior as, quote, just a man. The play's promoter says the musical shouldn't shake anyone's faith.
I think the show actually has a theme and an approach that people of just about any faith will enjoy.
Superstar finishes its run in Salt Lake this Easter Sunday.
There apparently won't be any professional baseball in Salt Lake City this year. The Trappers seem to be gone for good. Despite that, baseball fever is running high at City Hall.
The mayor and her baseball experts are confident that next year we'll have a new stadium and Portland, Oregon's AAA team. Mark Massesson is back from Portland, and tonight reports from the point of impact.
Nowadays, you can hardly find a seat in Dirks Field. They pulled most of them out, salvaging the aluminum. In coming weeks, the whole stadium will be gone, not just the jungle gym on this side of the center field fence. Portland will have the Portland Beavers this season, but if Salt Lake City's stadium is built by the end of next March, the Beavers owner says they'll be here. Their new name is not final, but he's got a pretty good idea.
Bees. It used to be Salt Lake Bees, you know, originally. Larry Miller likes that idea very much.
Utah Jazz owner Larry Miller is overseeing the new stadium project to bring it in on time. Miller tells me he's thrilled at the prospect of AAA ball making a comeback. It's just one step below the majors. He also figures Joe Buzis will use lessons learned in Portland to make it work better here. Mayor Dee Corradini still is hunting for the last $2 million to finance construction. While she continues to make pitches, she promises there will be no construction delays.
It's not easy to raise money, but we're working on it, and I'm optimistic that we'll get it all put together.
Under the contract with the city, Joe Buzis will pay $200,000 a year rent, get first priority use of the stadium, and get half the proceeds from parking and concessions.
I have a great feeling about it.
Way to go, Joe. See you next year. Mark Massesson, News 4, Utah.
You know, it's possible there's going to be some sort of a contest to decide the name of our new AAA team.
Larry Miller may have a voice in that. He seems to think the people of Salt Lake will like bees.
And Larry Miller does tend to get what he wants.
Yeah,
he knows how to make things happen. Up next, Easter bonnets or Easter umbrellas. Dan Pope on the weather porch up next.
And a bit later, the biggest, most elaborate cat house you've ever seen off the satellite.
Now, for all of my neighbors who are going to ask me about what Dan is about to tell you all about, Dan, these pamphlets look wonderful, really.
Well, indeed, they are. We've been working very hard, Clayton Bruff, Belinda Jensen, Rich Winter, Ben Tolman, all of us in the weather office working on these pamphlets, which, by the way, are very interesting.
Sure are.
Hope your friends will come over to the house.
Be knocking at the door.
See a few of those. Let me tell you a little bit about what we're doing here. We have the Utah Weather Guide, which gives you weather records, climate statistics, instruments, and publications. Every educator in the state of Utah, especially science teachers, should get a copy of this one. Now, you can go down to any Kinko store and pick these up, or you can send a self-addressed stamped envelope to KTVX, and we'll send them out to you. We also have Bet on the Weather, how to pick a dry day for an outdoor event, written by Clayton Bruff. And most importantly right now, Spring Tips for Utah Gardeners by Belinda Jensen. Let me show you 6 of those late freeze days, those average freeze days. This is 6 of 44 of them written in the pamphlet. At the airport, it's April 26th. In Ogden, it's May 1st. Provo, BYU is April 23rd. Bountiful at Valverta is April 17th. Cottonwood, May 1, that's the Cottonwood Weir. And Draper, believe it or not, June 6th. And as I mentioned, you can find 44 of those late freeze days, those average freeze days, and go down to any Kinko's and pick these up. In Logan, a little snow falling. Wellsville in the north part of the Cache Valley, that has ended. Today's high, though, did hit 55. Provo had 70 degrees, and St. George had a high of 74, and right now in St. George, it is 68 degrees. Here's our weather for photo of the day of Schofield Reservoir, sent in by Mike Pope of North Salt Lake. This is when Schofield Reservoir in 1987 was pretty full. Not so right now. Outside is currently cloudy. Temperature is 44 degrees. The humidity is 79%. The good news is the winds have died down in Salt Lake City, but in Provo, the winds are gusting to 22 miles per hour. The wind chill down there is 24 degrees. Today's high 62, the low 43. We've had 2/100ths of an inch of precipitation at the Salt Lake International Airport. Take a look at the satellite picture. One disturbance is moving on by. That's the one that's bringing precipitation to the Wasatch Front. Another one right here will move in late tomorrow and tomorrow night. But the good news is, in between, we'll probably see a little sunshine, although it'll be a little bit on the cool side tomorrow. Radar shows showers over the Uinta Basin from around the Book Cliffs northward, a little bit of snow falling in Rock Springs, but most of that precipitation is moving out. The cold front, though, has stalled. St. George is 68 right now. That low pressure, though, area should move through southern Utah, and it will cool down just a bit in the south part of the state, but I anticipate things will not be as bad down there. Wind gusts 45 in Wendover, West Kearns 44, South Jordan 37, all associated with the cold front. Let's take a look at that 5-day forecast, and we'll start out with the southern Utah area. 73 for tomorrow. Sunday's high will be 70, and the same Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. I expect no significant showers in Washington County, although the mountains might see a shower or two. Now for us, Mixed clouds and sunshine, maybe a shower or two Saturday into Sunday. The best chance Saturday night. Then Monday it starts to improve with a few brief showers in the morning. Tuesday and Wednesday, we should see more sunshine. I'm a little concerned about agricultural interests on those 2 nights, as we may see temperatures sub-freezing in the agricultural fruit growing areas. And of course, if you had the spring planting guide, you'd know what to do.
Okay, Dan. We'll get that.
All right.
We'll knock on Kimberly's door and get it. Thank you.
Kinko's is a much better
Okay.
idea. Thanks, Dan.
Still ahead, a teenager collapses and dies during a concert at a downtown club.
We'll tell you why. And while 2020 might have you questioning the Invent America program, we'll go to a Utah classroom for a close-up look here.
Iraq is thumbing its nose at the world once again, the latest challenge over the northern no-fly zone. It began as 2 pair of American fighters took off from Turkey on a routine patrol over Iraq's north. They were picked up by Iraqi radar and fired on. The fighters responded by dropping cluster bombs. On Baghdad TV, the Iraqis denied firing and put on display a soldier they said had been wounded in the attack. But since the fighters were fired on at different times and Iraqi cameras were there to record each of the incidents, U.S. officials view this as a deliberate provocation, not a mistake.
The Bosnian Serb commander says his troops will stop firing on a besieged town tomorrow. The commander said he's calling a ceasefire around Srebrenica. Thousands of Muslims have been trapped in the town and some have died trying to get on UN evacuation trucks. But that same commander insists that his forces will not let UN peacekeepers enter Srebrenica unless it's over his dead body. The sudden death of a teenager at a Salt Lake nightclub tops our look at Utah headlines tonight. 16-year-old Coleman Smith collapsed while attending a concert at the club Deviate last night. An autopsy showed he died from a hereditary heart condition. Utah's teens could get a summer shot in the arm. The federally funded summer jobs program budget will more than double here if President Clinton's budget passes. Groundbreaking today for a new science building at BYU to be named after church president Ezra Taft Benson. It was attended by LDS church officials and state politicians.
A Park City teacher found out that baking fudge to teach physics, by the way, not only works, but pays nice dividends. Linda Preston won the 1993 National Science Teachers Association Award and a Tandy Technology Scholarship Award, along with $12,500. Preston says it was more money than she made in her first 4 years of teaching. Invent America, one of the most successful educational programs in the country, may be having problems at the top. If you were just watching 2020, you heard allegations that the Virginia-based organization and its chairman are running a charity primarily for his own good.
But don't tell that to those who run the program here in Utah. We went to 2 Invent America award ceremonies where the judges and the inventors themselves could say nothing but good about the program.
You walk into a room, there's 500 to 700, 800 inventions, all with kids bright-eyed and excited about what they created, not what someone assigned them to create. And it's their little baby, and they've really worked hard on it.
These students were all assigned to solve a problem, not a math equation, but a problem in their life, and they couldn't turn to their parents or teacher for help. The end result? A saddle with an extra step to help Molly get on her horse easier. A modified transfer board to help Matt help Grandpa.
It forms a bridge from a bed to a wheelchair or a commode so you can be moved across with this cloth. And I've put grips on the bottom so it doesn't dump the person on the ground when you're sliding it.
So who is this for?
My grandpa and people who are bedridden.
And a tuna net to help save the dolphins.
Tell me what you got here.
Okay, it's a tuna net that's designed to let dolphins escape and not get caught. This would be rolled up, and it would circle the dolphins and the tuna. And when it closes up, this net would divide down the middle, separating the dolphins from the tuna.
Once the students identify the problem, they must also form a marketing plan.
And this would sell for $49.95 at a medical supply store.
You may never see Stephen's fold-up crutch in a medical supply store, but the local Invent America coordinator says that's not the point.
They can solve their own problem. A lot of times, everyone else solves their problems, especially teachers in the classroom, but this time it's their problem. What's frustrating to them? And they're very happy when they have solved a very simple problem.
I think that's a great idea. And Andrus also says the 3-week program certainly helps develop creativity.
No matter who you are, you have to admit that's something they don't get every day in the classroom. Well, next in sports for Utah, a soggy second round at the Masters.
And the beginning of the end for the Eagles.
Now, you've probably heard the Calgary Flames are pulling the Salt Lake Golden Eagles out of Salt Lake. A lot of people are wondering if that means hockey is leaving Salt Lake City.
No, Larry Miller's already said professional hockey will be here next year. The affiliation is still up in the air, but there will be pro hockey. So tonight is not the end of professional hockey, and tomorrow night not the end of professional hockey, just the Salt Lake Golden Eagles. Because tonight and tomorrow night are the last games in the Delta Center for the Eagles before they say farewell forever. San Diego, the best team in the IHL, came to town tonight trying to improve their record, and the goals showed why they're the best. After ending the first tied at 1, San Diego exploded for 4 more goals. They won this one going away 5-1. The same 2 teams go at it again tomorrow night, the last home game for Salt Lake. You'll have to pardon BYU's basketball fans if they're not quite sure what's happening with the program. They know Sean Bradley won't be back, but that's about all that's official. The rumor that Kenneth Roberts will be not coming back, well, his parents told us today they've enrolled him in school when he returns from his mission. And Mike Allen says there are some very strong feelings inside that BYU team.
A lot of people think it's just a couple of people, but it's not really. I mean, there's been a lot of, inside turmoil guys been having.
The BYU basketball program was rocked last week by Sean Bradley's announcement that he was turning pro. Then this week, both Ryan Cuff and Russell Larson asked for and were released from their athletic commitments. This opens the door for the pair to transfer to other schools, but as Coach Roger Reed told us, neither have announced they're leaving. Obviously, the two weren't happy with their situation at BYU, but teammate Nick Sanderson says that shouldn't reflect on them personally.
They're brave people and strong people and good people. And I don't want people out there to think that they're bad people or why they're leaving, because they're bad people. But, they're really good people, and they're thinking about their future.
Sanderson also said that although Reed has been taking a lot of criticism lately, some of it may be deserved.
And I feel sorry that, it's taking hard hits, but it's time to face the music and listen and take heed to what people are saying. It's not just a couple of people. It's a lot of people that feel uneasy, and it's time to just, to listen to what's going on.
I don't think, first of all, I don't think there's anything that needs to be said in his behalf. I think that his record and his track record and his successes and the things that he's done and the kind of person that he is and the quality of man that he is stands by itself.
Reed has chosen not to express his feelings at this time, but says that plenty of programs lose players for a variety of reasons, and that whatever happens, he'll try to put the best possible team on the floor next season. Mike Allen, Sports for Utah.
Well, Joe Cravens is inheriting a hornet's nest as the new head coach at the University of Idaho basketball team. The Ute assistant not only has to follow a 24-8 season, but he has to handle irate boosters who thought Vandal assistant Hugh Watson should have been the new coach. Today, Idaho's head football coach told the boosters to, quote, stop being spoiled kids by threatening to cut off donations when Watson was not selected. Good luck, Joe. You're going to need it up there. In the NBA tonight, Detroit gets a win at Boston. Charlotte wins on the road at Philadelphia. Chicago nips Atlanta. Cleveland over Washington. Orlando wins it. And the Sacramento game is now final. Seattle wins that 111-97. Partials in the second. Phoenix ahead of Denver. And at halftime, it's Portland by 1 over the Lakers. Well, the skies opened at Augusta National this afternoon. And part of the field of the 93 Masters is going to have to finish up tomorrow morning. Dan Forsman could only watch as the officials squeegeed the green at 18. They'll finally allow him to putt out and finish the day with another 69. He's 1 stroke off the pace at 6 under. Jeff Maggart putts from off the green but sinks this eagle at 15. He is alone atop the leaderboard at 7 under par. And Jack Nicklaus gave back 1 stroke on the front side and played 10 through 13 even, but he had to call it quits after the 13th. He is 4 under par. He will finish up tomorrow morning. So let's take a look at the leaderboard right now. Maggart on top. You see Forsman, Nicklaus with 13 in the bank is 4 under. Norman at -2. Clearwater, J. Don Blake are going to make the cut, but Dick Zokel with a snowman, number 8 today. An 8 on a par 3 is not going to make it. Bo Jackson, known some highs and lows over his brief sports career, probably none higher than this 6th inning pinch hit homer this afternoon against the Yankees. Bo coming back after hip replacement surgery went the opposite way. Towering shot, his first at bat in his comeback attempt. How important was the homer? Bo retrieved the ball from the fan who caught it, but it cost him a hat and a bat in the exchange. Pretty good deal. Okay, let's take a look at the winners in the American tonight. New York wins it. Toronto, Texas, Minnesota at Kansas City. Partials have California ahead of Detroit in the 5th. In the second, Seattle is ahead of Baltimore. Milwaukee leads Oakland in the fourth. A National League record crowd of over 80,000 welcoming Major League Baseball to Denver. The Rockies played their first home game against Montreal today. They made it successful as they thumped the Expos by a score of 11-4. And in the National, there's the Colorado win. Chicago gets Philadelphia. San Diego a winner over the Marlins. It was Pittsburgh downing the Giants by a single run. Houston wins in 10 innings over the Mets. And partials, and now it's a final. Atlanta 2-0 over the Dodgers, and St. Louis 8-2 over the Cincinnati Reds. Wow. That's a look at sports for Friday.
Big night, that Bo Jackson story.
What a great thing. Yeah, that's the old Cinderella at the ball, right? He hasn't turned into the pumpkin yet. So.
That's neat. Thanks a lot,
Thank
Bonnie.
you, Steve. Off the satellite, still ahead. Finally tonight, a couple items that would have flown right over your heads had we not picked them off the satellite.
We begin with the biggest, most elaborate cat house you've ever seen. I mean, the kind a cat would live in. Two San Diego felines are basking in the lap of luxury. Their owner says he built it to give his favorite pet something to show off to their neighbors. The 12-room structure was about a year in the making. It's a replica of downtown San Diego circa 1915.
Get a job. From the other side of the mainland, Buffalo, New York, where we find Olga Alexeyevich Lawney and her real Easter eggs. Olga is preserving a centuries-old Ukrainian tradition. With these elaborately decorated Easter eggs, the artist says Ukrainians actually started the practice of painting eggs and making them Easter eggs in about the year 900. Spring eggs became Easter eggs in about 988 AD when Ukrainians discovered Christianity. A little history lesson there to end it off.
Those are heirlooms, and you know, Brownie says he has one of those.
No kidding.
Yeah.
He's got one of everything. He's got Bo's baseball, too.
That's it for us. For all of us here at News 4 Utah, thanks for tuning in.
Please join the weekend team tomorrow at 5 o'clock.
Good night.
For 24-hour news coverage, join the News 4 Utah team on KCNR 1320 AM radio, Utah's News Center.